Hey everyone, welcome back to the next episode of the In the Zone podcast. I have another very special guest here. We have Ryan Spicer. He is a rather famous, I'll say, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist who has topped a variety of tournaments, including Shonen Jump Championships, YCSs, and the U.S. Nationals 2010 and 2009. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Fun to walk down memory lane and share some life experiences.
Oh, absolutely. We have 10 questions for you, calling it the Titanic 10. Some tough questions, some easy ones, some from our some of the Janjo Zone subscribers. And we'll just start off with the first question here. So, question number 1. What was your edge that helped you win Shonen Jump Chicago in 2008 with Plasma Dad?
Man, that's kind of a tough one because it's been so long, you know?
Yeah. Digging up those memories.
Yeah, I would say generally I feel like my edge during like the time when I was like really competitive in the game was I just practiced a lot. Like I would like me and Chris Bowling in high school, we would like basically anytime I was not in school and even in school, I would just be like thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh! And writing out deck lists and ideas, and then we would literally play from like the time of school's out until we were like forced to go to sleep. And then on the weekends when I had more time, I remember like we would go to like a Denny's and play until the sun rose the next day.
Oh, yeah, Denny's.
So we were putting in a lot of reps and just getting a lot of like experience. And I might be wrong about this event, but I feel like that event, I don't know if Plasma and Scapegoat was used by all of the players, and I feel like that was like a good engine that I used specifically. And then also, if I recall correctly, I think my side deck was a little unique in the fact that I side decked into Monarch. And I think that was helpful at the time because at that event, there was a lot of anti-meta geared towards beating Teledad because it was like the primary strategy being used at the time. So I think I side decked into spies and like like stuff that helped fight against anti-meta. So I think, that kind of helped in those matchups. And then I think also just having Teledad was an edge because it was a really expensive strategy at the time. Like, I remember at the time I was like 17 or something, and I was driving this like old Buick Skylark. And I'm pretty sure my Yu-Gi-Oh deck was more expensive than the cost of my car. So,
That was one of the more expensive
like
times of Yu-Gi-Oh! For sure.
Yeah, I would say that was a price barrier. So if you played against somebody who didn't have that strategy, you had like an 80-90% chance of winning to begin with, so that helped. Obviously that wasn't, I mean, you still had to play against a lot of competitive strategies and players, so that that alone isn't going to like win you the event. And then also at that time, that was kind of like at that time too, I feel like I was especially driven because a few events prior to that, like if you actually look back in the history during that era, I had like a streak of like top place finishes, where it started off in Nashville, earlier that year or the end of the previous year, where I had a bunch of events where I placed in high rankings after that event, and then after Chicago, I think there was one event past that I didn't go to, and then the very next one I went to in Houston, I think I got second place.
Yep.
And anyways, that was all kind of like sparked because of Nashville, where I kind of got screwed because it was in the final round of Swiss. I was X1, and I was playing against the card shop owner from Canada. I think it was a team of like Dale Bledo and all them, and I got like basically like for some reason at that event they were really trying to get me, like the judges, and I ended up getting they called it unintentional cheating, like double game loss in the final round because my solemn judgment was a little bit like flimsy on the edge because it was like a Metal Raider Solemn Judgment, so it was really old, and they called it like unintentional cheating, and then they gave me a double game loss, and this was after they deck checked me like 6 rounds in a row, and so anyways, that was like I took that really hard because during that era I really tried, like like I said, like after school, like every day I was just practicing for like 4 to 10 hours like every day. Like it was like my life. I was obsessed, and so like having that happen to me, like it really like made me very like hurt, and I was just like very determined to do whatever I could to like just perform at like. And like I had it in my head, I was gonna like win all the events I went to. I was like, I'm done with this. Like I'm gonna win all of them. Obviously, you can't win all of them, but that was my intention.
It's a little ironic that it was a solemn judgment that got you.
Yeah, right. That's funny. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
the card that stops everything else.
I think it was a solemn judgment, and maybe a Mirror Force. Like maybe it was a Mirror Force too, because that was an old one. It was like also in that era, Raiders. Like old card. Yeah.
So what's your typical Denny's order?
Denny's order. Actually, I think it was IHOP. I misspoke. It was IHOP for sure. Probably it's been a long time, but I have to say French toast. I'm definitely a French. I'm a French toast over pancakes guy for sure.
I'm a bit of a waffle guy myself. Shout out to Waffle House.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. I think both of them are superior to pancakes. That's for sure. Pancakes are just fluffy and gross.
All right. Let's move on to question number 2. Good job with the first one. Wasn't too bad. Maybe it'll get easier from here. Let's find out. You were at SJC Edison, correct? One of the more famous events.
Yep. Yeah, I was.
And so you were running a Caliber Cat deck. What made you decide to go with that deck, considering that the event was really like a ton of variety of decks at the event, including Quick Draw, Dandy Warrior?
That's when I really don't have as much of a recollection around. I do know that me and Billy Brake, we kind of collaborated on that strategy, and I think we both ran very similar decks, and he ended up, I'm pretty sure he made the top cut. I think he might have made like top 4. And then I think I finished like X2, I want to say, in the event. So we both had like reasonable records with the strategy. I think the strategy was like overall pretty good. But I do remember showing up to that event and feeling like crap, like we kind of missed the boat. Because we played against Jeff Jones the night before, and he was playing the like the plant strategy, and I think like we just kind of just messed up by not using that strategy. I think we just overlooked it and didn't realize how good it was. But at that point, in my opinion, it's kind of too late, because it's hard to switch to a new strategy and play it very well with such short notice. Like you're just gonna make a lot of mistakes if you switch to something you're not familiar with. At least in my opinion, like I'm the kind of person who need a lot of repetition. Like I can't just like think of something and like implement it immediately. Like I have to like just get a bunch of repetitions in. So for me to like switch to a new strategy right before just wouldn't have been really viable.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure that applies to a lot of other people who were at the event too. Considering like the variety of decks we saw just post one ban list, it was just everything was kind of open for interpretation at the event.
Yeah, it really is kind of a interesting like format and event when you look back at it, because there's just so many different viable strategies. It's like kind of wild.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why everyone like loves to go back at that time specifically. It's one of probably the most played retro Time Wizard format. All right, question number 3. So you value winning as your number 1 priority in Yu-Gi-Oh, but have you had any cards that you were back and forth on with their viability?
I mean, I definitely had like favorites and stuff but like I think when it came to competing and stuff, I didn't really have too much of a hard time like cutting things. like I definitely had like an affinity for certain cards. Like, I've always really liked like Jujitsu Master
Mm.
and the artwork on that and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, we just
I
saw
want to say
Jujitsu
like
Master at GGP Orlando.
yeah, I saw that Shaggy got second place
Hmm.
with that. Yeah, I was watching the finals. I always kind of like the Dark Creator as well, but that was a card, that wasn't like super good.
Uh,
Um,
I, I
I
I
remember, I do
love.
remember though.
I was I love Dark Creator Turbo in like mid 2008. One of my favorite decks from that time.
Yeah, like I remember liking that strategy as well with Armageddon Knights and Necro Gardeners and stuff, right? I remember I built a deck. My deck in Austin, I was inspired by that guy who got. I think he got second place at nationals playing like a semi turbo-y kind of deck with Dark Creator in it,
Hmm.
and I kind of like I remember that was the inspiration for the deck I played in Austin where I got like fourth place or something, like in 2009. But yeah, I would say Dark like the Creator, because like the Creator has a few things like um that kind of triggers memories for me. One was like when I was competing when I first got into Yu-Gi-Oh, I played up in northern Michigan. Like there's this one player who always used like the actual Creator,
Hmm.
and I know I thought the original Creator was like really cool with the it's like I think it's the Creator Incarnate, and
Yeah, yeah.
like this is early on when I was like not very good, and I thought that card was like really cool,
It looks
and
so cool.
so yeah, it did look cool. And it has when you don't really understand card advantage either, it seems like a good effect. You're like, oh, like that's cool. You can like revive any monster. Yeah, I would say the Dark Creator too. And then I remember when that set was released as well. I remember like debating with Billy Brake on like whether Dark Creator or Dark Arm Dragon was better.
Oh
And
wow.
I was like, I was very wrong because I was all about Dark Creator and he was all about Dark Arm Dragon, and he was definitely right on that on that debate.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you see people who couldn't afford Dark Arm Dragon, they went to Dark Nephthys instead.
I forgot about that card. Yeah.
I mean, Dark Raiders are really fun though. I gotta say. I remember when Rise of Destiny was coming out, and you just see this big orange dude. It's just too bad it can't be revived from the graveyard. All right. So moving on, staying on the whole winning streak here. Like, what are some techniques that help you win outside of just deck building?
I would say during that like time in my life. So I kind of have like two answers for this question. The younger version of myself when I was in that competitive environment, I feel like it was very much about being comfortable. Um, so I was like I remember being very, 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 very friendly with the people I played with. I think it was partially to help me not feel like intimidated. It helped take off like some of the edge, I guess. Like I just remember like I would I would just go out of my way to just be like very, very friendly. Always respectful, always shake hands, like always like just like polite, stuff like that. And I remember like many times in like the finals of like events and stuff, I remember I would like literally take off my shoes because I wanted to make it feel like I was in Chris Bowling's living room, like practicing at the place we always practice. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? So it would like kind of like just bring that sense of like, okay, like I've done this a million times, and like there's nothing to like overthink, there's nothing to worry about, and I think it would just help me like get into the zone a little bit, just being very like comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was like my mental strategy is like because if you overthink things and if you like put too much pressure on yourself and make something more important than it is, it can really mess up your performance and make you like rush through decisions or do things that aren't great, I guess. And then in current day, so after Yu-Gi-Oh, I branched out into poker, and currently I've been playing poker professionally for almost a decade.
Wow.
And I would say my new answer would be like more about like preparation and like priming. So before I begin any session, I would just make sure to like go through like certain warm up routines. So like for example, before I ever like nowadays before I start like my sessions, I will I make sure to get some type of movement in my day. So like either go for like a 30-minute walk, go for a run, I go cold plunging, use a sauna, like just do something to kind
Mhm.
of like stimulate my body. I also will like spend a little bit of time reviewing like study material and looking over strategy to kind of get my brain thinking in a strategic manner, because our like human brains aren't great at like being logical and um rational about things. Like we're super influenced by our emotions and what that asshole just said to us, or what like so like it's good to like whatever you're about to do, it's good to spend a little bit of time like priming your mind to get into that mode of like thinking, because
Mhm.
everything you do in life requires a different like frame of mind. So that would be my answer.
So you don't take your shoes off when you play poker?
Occasionally I do, yeah.
All right. Do you feel like
But I'm less friendly. I'm less friendly when I play poker, which is
ah,
probably is which is something I actually want to work on.
okay.
It's harder. I think it's harder to be friendly because the sometimes the money can make it more stressful. So
Yep, that's one thing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh players don't really have to worry about, huh? No cash prizes.
yeah,
Do you feel like
yeah.
a lot of the skills from Yu-Gi-Oh transfer over to poker, and you think that could be applied to like other, whether it's like other card games or
Yeah,
games in
yeah,
general?
yeah, absolutely. The biggest skill that Yu-Gi-Oh taught was like it's kind of like deductive reasoning. It's like if you summon your second or third monster on the board and they don't use torrential, they don't got torrential. So
Right.
you can deduce things about like what your opponent has based on you know, like how they react to things and stuff like that. And that same logic applies with poker. And then something else too is like Yu-Gi-Oh. Like it's funny because Yu-Gi-Oh is actually I kind of forgot how high variance Yu-Gi-Oh is until I started playing again in like Go format. But it's a really
Mhm.
high variance game, and that's something you have to deal with in poker as well. You can make all the right decisions and you still lose. So it
Yeah.
definitely like prepares you for that. But I think those same skills like just transfer to really anything. And I think like the biggest lesson I took away from both things was you really can pretty much do anything in life. It's just you just really have to dedicate yourself to it and put in the time and like actually be humble to like admit like your mistakes and stuff. And as long as you're able to do those things, like you can really like you can go far with a lot of different things, basically.
Yeah, I think it's important to like understand when you make mistakes, because if you don't understand you're making mistakes, then you can't fix and improve later down the road.
Yeah, and like I think it's important to like be able to look past embarrassment, and that's something I struggled with a lot when I first got into poker. For example, I would make mistakes, and like it was really hard for me to like acknowledge them
Mhm.
because it was just I was young as well. I was like 23, so like I think it was also harder like being younger, admitting like, oh man, I fucked up.
Right.
And eventually you learn that the only way you would get better on anything is like being able to like, okay, like I did mess up here, this is why, and this is what I can do to do better. And then once you're able to do that process, that's when you start making improvements and making progress.
Yeah, if you're not improving, then you're just getting worse. So, question number 5 is actually a subscriber question. So, this might be a little bit different. Do you think that old formats were more skill intensive?
Well, I can't. It's okay. It's kind of hard to say because I'm not as like in touch with the current formats, but I can think through my own experience, like through the progression of the formats I did play, and like there was definitely changes, right? Where like maybe early on things were there weren't XYZ mechanics, there weren't synchro mechanics, and the introduction to all these different things. And I remember like back when I was playing, the big concern was like the power creep. I think that was like the term they used
Hmm.
was, every set release they were like continually like bringing out more and more busted cards. I don't necessarily know if that necessarily makes things less skilled. I think it just changes the skill set a little bit. it might increase like the variance factor, like I was referencing earlier. Like,
Hmm.
maybe say in like 2006 or 7 when you're playing with like warrior strategies and like the power card was Cyber Dragon, you know,
Hmm.
and games were like more drawn out, so there's more decision points. Like I could see how skill plays a bigger factor where it's like, maybe if you're like one of the top players in the world, like say you're like a Jerry Wang and you're playing against somebody who's like, not very skilled, it's like, you could have like an 80% like win rate or something or 90% win rate because you have more decision points to make decisions, and the more decision points that are presented, the more opportunities there are for people to make mistakes. So like I could see how that would increase the skill edge. Whereas if you have like these huge power cards where the games end within like a few turns, then yeah, I mean, to me that would make sense. Like the more like absurd like power cards are that end
Hmm.
games and diminish decision points, then yeah, I would think that it would diminish like skill to some degree. I mean, I think I've talked to some people and they've said like current Yu-Gi-Oh sometimes lasts like a few turns. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's typically a like a lot of decks is you set up your board, then you pass. If they can break it, then you have to break their board. Otherwise, you kind of win. It's very like three turn clock in a lot of decks, unless it's a control deck. But those
Yeah.
aren't as prevalent as combo decks.
Yeah, so in that case, like I would say like almost certainly, I would say almost certainly like older formats would probably be more skill intensive. I wouldn't say like there's no skill though. And like
Hmm.
I think whenever there's decisions to be made in general, there's going to be some level of skill. But I think like the core of my answer would just be the more decision points that a game has, the more opportunity there is for skill to be expressed.
Hmm. Yeah, and this is not to say that like older formats don't have very quick turn decks. I mean,
Yeah.
look at all like the FTKs and power decks: Frog FTK, Dark Strike Fighter, Teledad, Chaos Emperor Dragon, Yada Lock.
Even goat format sometimes can have stuff like that where it's like if one person opens up Trinity and then they have a faith immediately and your opponent can't answer the faith, like and that's pretty close to an
Hmm.
FTK. So
Yeah, but we've also
um
seen with a lot of skill duelists, you could hit more skilled duelists with all these power cards, but a lot of these skilled duelists can still find ways to come back and bring the game back.
any game that gives you like free will and like the ability to choose, like skill can be expressed.
So moving on to question number 6. We're over halfway done, doing pretty good so far. What was it that made you leave competitive TCG Yu-Gi-Oh originally?
I think at the time it was really the lack of prize support. I was at a place in my life where I think I was like 19, 18, 19 years old, and real world concerns were becoming, more prevalent and stuff. I was in college. I think I was starting to live on my own, stuff like that. So it's like I was just becoming much more aware. It's like, oh crap, like I need to make money.
Hmm.
So I think that was really the impetus, and that kind of like made me question like just playing the game in general. And I went through a phase where like when I played, I hustled. I was like one of the backpack hustlers at the events, and have my I'd bring like a wad of cash and just buy stuff and then come home and sell everything on Troll and Toad. That was how I made money in high school. But I realized like if I wanted to stay involved in the game, for me, like I my passion for like the game was actually just playing it. Like I really didn't like going around hustling people for like, flipping cards and stuff.
Mm.
Like that was like soul draining to me. And I realized like, okay, I can't play the game. And I was like, do I want to like open up a business, like, selling the cards, like, maybe like having a vendor booth or having a website, selling stuff on Amazon, etc. And I kind of just looked around and I was just like, nah, I don't think that's the future I want, like
Hmm.
going to events and like vending and just like hustling cards. I was like, it just didn't seem very interesting to me. It was really just money, more than anything. I initially transitioned to Magic the Gathering for about a year, and I played on the pro circuit for about a year. I actually was able to cash at least one event, maybe two. Like I went to Oregon, Portland. They had like a pro circuit series,
Hmm.
and I think I finished in the like high enough. I was able to like win a cash prize, and
Nice.
then I went to like I think I went to St. Louis as well. But then after being involved with Magic, I was like, huh. I wonder if you can learn poker. and then and then me and Chris Bowling actually started, going to like play money events and like bar tournaments and stuff, and just kind of like learning the rules, and then eventually we just kind of like learned, like, holy crap, there's actually a skill set to this. And then we subscribed to some like training sites, and then we just kind of like, went in that direction
Hmm.
because it was like, sweet, we can play a game. We can play a card game, which we've been doing since we were like 10, and we can also make money. So sweet, let's do that.
Yeah, it's the best of both worlds. I mean, that's a lot of people's criticism with competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that there's just no cash prizes, and it's really lagging behind the other big two, Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. I mean, let alone something like more traditional card games like poker.
At the time, like when I was younger and playing it, it's like it did seem like it was like, dang, that really sucks. But I don't know, like looking back at it, and it's like I kind of get where Konami and the creators are coming from now, where it's like it seems like, their intention of the game is just different. They're not necessarily trying to like create like this hyper competitive thing with like money at stake. Like I think they're really just trying to make it a children's card game. And so yeah, I can kind of like understand, what they're doing now, that I'm like removed from it.
But then you also have the logic of, well, if you want people to play this game, if they want to win money, that's like a really good incentive for these people to play it. And on top of that, I personally I think a lot of these card games, while they are geared towards kids, you still have to market them towards older people because they're the ones that actually have the money to spend money on these products. Then if you give them money, like with events, you have more people trying to get that, and then more buying more product, and it's like a
Yeah,
tide kind of. But that's just my
yeah. I mean,
perspective on it.
yeah, I can see both sides of it.
All right. So moving on to question number 7. So we're going a little in the dark side of Yu-Gi-Oh! I know you've talked about this on your YouTube channel. So do you find cheating like still prevalent in like modernish of like the modernish meta? I guess we can kind of generalize this a bit more, just kind of more in like the stuff like you've played recently, whether it is like Yu-Gi-Oh or like poker.
Well, so there's a few things with the modern state of Yu-Gi-Oh. I literally can't speak to that at all.
Hmm.
Um, I can just speculate that, based on what I saw during my time, I can only I would just assume, there's cheating happening because it's a competitive game, and I feel like anything that's competitive, and if people can get away with it, they'll do it. I mean, there's even examples of it, like, yeah, I don't mean to like, shots fire or like fire shots or anything, but there's examples of it even in the goat world where I think Chris Provic, he got banned from goats for some period of time recently because I don't know exactly the ins and outs, so I might like misrepresent exactly what happened, but I think there was something along the lines of he had like a software that allowed him access to like other people's deck lists, and he was like using that to give it to himself and his teammates in
Hmm.
like tournaments, which is like to me when I heard that I was like, that's just insane. It's like
Yeah.
like it's like, why are you cheating? Like, why are you cheating like at this stage in life for
Hmm.
something that just doesn't matter? So for whatever reason, I guess anything competitive, man, if people can get away with it, they will do it. So that's just like the unfortunate thing. You have to like really keep an eye out for it.
Like what would you say has been like the worst aspect of cheating that like you've seen like in the game as someone who's been at so many like high level events?
Well, I mean, I think cheating just in general is just bad. I mean, I would just say quite a few people had like they would cheat in various ways. Like if they were able to get away with it, if it
Hmm.
was like as little as, I don't know, like life point stuff, like I would say that's like that's kind of softcore cheating. It's still cheating, but there was definitely people I knew. I just don't want to call people's names out and stuff, but
Hmm.
there was definitely people I knew who would stack decks, or I think that was the primary thing, was like stacking decks. I even knew one person at one point where it was kind of it was kind of crazy, because like I think this was like early on in that person's like time playing, but I remember he would be shuffling his opponent's deck, and he would drop like an expensive card in his lap, and then
Oh
and then
no.
and so he would get an expensive card. I don't think he would like call a judge on them, because I don't think he wanted to get caught cheat or stealing. But there was just a lot of that kind of stuff. There was even like, I remember there was even groups of like guys from New York that would I mean, if you were in Maryland, you might know some of these guys, but there was like groups of guys from that area who would like come to events, and like they would just steal people's backpacks, and like that was like they came to events to do that stuff, and they were like pretty sophisticated about it. Like they would have a whole setup where they would like, one of their guys would be playing. They would be like, hey, do you want to play, like, do you want to play for cards, do you want to play for fun? And they would have one of their friends like sitting next to him. They would like slowly like nudge his backpack, like, towards the back, and then a third guy would just like walk by, like pick up the backpack and just walk away, and like no one would know what happened. And,
Man.
like they were like just super messed up stuff like that.
Oh.
So like I saw all kinds of crazy stuff. Like fortunately, I never got involved in that stuff. Like I remember those guys even at one point, they had like eBay scams going on, and they were like, they wanted to use my account at one time, and I was like, no, like I'm not getting involved in fraud.
Nowhere near that.
Yeah, no interest, buddy.
That's really terrible. I mean, I recall that a legendary fisherman of mine was stolen in, must have been early 2003. Never got over that. I mean, they always tell you when you go to like your locals or any event, keep an eye on stuff, kind of keep it, close by you, because
Yeah.
stuff happens. Like it's a common thing, unfortunately.
And what I remember, I actually had a really positive experience with Chris Provic, though. I will say, like, even though I called him out on the recent thing,
Hmm.
I actually, one of my first events, my first event I traveled to on the competitive level was SJC Orlando, and like it was like 2006 or seven, I think. I had like left my Yu-Gi-Oh backpack or whatever. I kind of like left it somewhere,
Hmm.
and then I went back to, like, I think I turned around to like get it, and it was just gone. And I was like panicking, and it just so happens Chris Provic, he picked it up, and like he walked away with it, but then he came back, and it was to teach me a lesson. And he's like, hey, don't leave things laying around. It will go missing. And that always stuck with me. So like I was always like super paranoid about things getting stolen. And I remember one time, like, that paranoia paid off. I was at this regional event in Louisiana. I remember after an event, me and my friends like went into this like place. I think it was like called like CC's Pizza. It was like this pizza chain.
Oh yeah,
And
I've heard of it.
before I went into the restaurant, I don't know, my paranoia came in, and I took my backpack, and I like put a pillow. I put some stuff like over it, just because like I thought it would just be a good idea for some reason. And then when we came out of the restaurant, everyone else's stuff was stolen except for mine, because I had put something on top of it. And like,
Oh
so like
wow.
just crazy stuff, man. Yeah, crazy stuff.
CC's Pizza, man. Never trust them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was like, it was probably a setup. I think that's what happened.
Mm.
I think it was like I think the guys we were with like set it was like me, Billy Brake, and some other guys, and I'm pretty sure Billy's stuff got stolen, but like basically I'm pretty sure the guys we rode with like set us up, in hindsight.
This is
Yeah.
some like Ocean's 11, like chess playing.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. It was yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh was an interesting adventure, that's for sure.
Yeah. When people, haven't really been into like a lot of these, like a lot of groups and teams and going to these events and stuff, they don't really think about all this stuff that happens. They just think, oh, people show up, play Yu-Gi-Oh, they go home. Speaking of meta, though, we have a subscriber question here, which is, what is your favorite meta to deck build for? I guess, what was your favorite meta?
I'm gonna answer that very vague, and I would say I just really like, that was my favorite part of Yu-Gi-Oh was deck building. I think that was just the most interesting thing to me. Like, I remember like I said in like high school, like instead of paying attention to geometry, I was definitely like writing in a notebook, just like I just had I had endless notebooks full of Yu-Gi-Oh strategies I was just thinking of all the time. I feel like that was actually like where I was like strongest in the game as well, was understanding like where a metagame was at and understanding how to like counter that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was always my strong point. But I remember like early on in formats, I would always perform really poorly because everything was undefined. Like everything was kind of up in the air. So I didn't really know how to like develop my strategies against what to expect. So I was kind of like left in no man's land. And then I remember like, after a month or two of things developing and a metagame forming, that's when I would start doing really well in events. It was because like I kind of had like a basis to like strategize against. Whereas like when that didn't exist, I was just like I don't know. I just had to like copy whatever like
Mm-hmm.
one of my teammates was doing.
You ever look on Chris Perovic's metagame.com?
I had definitely have, yeah.
What was there a point where like a format or like a year that you really felt like in a groove of like, yeah, I got this going, everything I'm doing, like everything is clicking, it's
Yeah, I would say it was around that Teledad era. Like I said, I had that I had that experience at SJC Nashville where I got like a double game loss. Prior to that, like for years, I had like my entire life was like just Yu-Gi-Oh when I was in it. Like
mm-hmm.
I guess I kind of have that personality where I get very obsessed with things. It was like all I thought about, it was all I did. All my social group was that. So like leading up to that period, I had spent years just like practicing and refining and like just thinking about the game. So I feel like like my mind was just like I had spent so much time like developing that way. And then during that era and having that experience, it kind of just lit like a massive fire under my ass where I was just like it was just like some type of fuel where it was just like I want to prove everyone wrong. I want to like, I just want to do. I don't know. I was just super motivated. So I would say that would be the era, and then I would say also like SJC Austin. I really enjoyed that event for the deck building aspect. I like that event. I played like a very very unique deck that was designed to beat Blackwing and Lightsworn. So Lightsworn and Blackwing were the like dominant decks at the time, and I
Mm-hmm.
developed a chaos strategy that use Dimensional Alchemist, because basically I used Dimensional Alchemist and Mystic Tomatoes because they were like battle resilient against Light Sworn and Blackwing, and then also Stardust Dragon was like
Mm-hmm.
exceptionally good against both of those decks, and the Dimensional Alchemist allowed me to cycle. Basically, the play was like you could bring out a Stardust Dragon, and then you'd have a plague engrave, and then your alchemist would get back a malicious from your deck, and then you would use plague to like put that back on top, and then you could special summon it, and then bring out a second malicious, and you could synchro again. So you're able to go like it allowed you to use like more colossals and more Stardust dragons against those decks. Or it was colossal, not Stardust. Like Stardust was good too, but
Mm-hmm.
colossal was like exceptionally good against them. So I would say that was like a really really cool event for me because I felt like it was a fight where I was able to like tap into a strategy that was like really damn effective
Mm-hmm.
against the metagame. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice when you make a meta call and it turns out to be correct. Especially during that time with like
Well,
chaos synchro stuff.
it was a medical, you are right. But I just remember like I remember discovering it and practicing with it at my locals and just being like, holy shit, like I want to keep this a secret like
Mm-hmm.
like up until the event. Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
tell your teammates about it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like me and Billy both played it. Funny enough, actually the guy like Chris Bowling who won the event, he played Lightsworn, and it was funny enough act like so against him, like I technically think I should have slash would have won that event. Basically there was a mistake in the top eight or top four, whichever one I lost in either top eight or top four to him, but basically
Mm-hmm.
the judges called time early, not realizing we were in the top eight or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
we actually had like additional time, and then they were like like, oh hey, actually we made a mistake, but since you've already played one turn in time, just finish in time. So then I ended up losing in time,
Oh no.
in a game I would have more than likely won. It's not the end of the world, but
Hmm.
it was painful at the time. But it happens.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part of time in Yu-Gi-Oh. It gets the best of everyone eventually. The sweet embrace
Yeah,
of time death. All right, let's move on to question number 9. We're almost there, almost. Doing good so far? You doing good?
doing good.
All right. What would it take for you to come back to the modern meta? Would it be like cash prizes? Would it have been like an interesting new mechanic?
It would be a really hard. Honestly, it'd be a hard sell. It would be. It would have to be like something outrageous. It would have to be like a paid sponsorship, and like I would have to. They'd have to give me a salary or something. Like that's just the only way. I think. Yeah, I would have to like not worry. Like if I didn't have to worry about money, then maybe I would consider it. But that's pretty much the only way. It's just I'm just at a different. Yeah, I'm just in a different place in life these days.
Mm,
I still love the game. Like I think about the game still like almost daily. I like it's just like I still like have fond memories of it and stuff. And
mm-hmm.
I'm still like loosely involved in goats and stuff. I still like tune into the finals matches on for goatformat.com and stuff like that. Still holds a place in my heart, but it's just like not like that relevant to me in my current like mode of living. So
Yeah, they always say people never leave Yu-Gi-Oh for good, even if it's just for retro formats. I mean, that's where I came in contact with you was in the online chat at GGP Orlando.
yeah, dude, I mean the addiction's in the blood, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I left Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't recall how long it was, but eventually you start thinking about it, you get like that nostalgia factor, and you're like, I kind of want it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 2015 when I got back in with the legendary decks. I was like, oh man, I want to play these, and then it just opened the floodgates right up. I did play a little bit of like the modern stuff and on like 2018, 2019, but then I kind of fell out of it since. But stuff like Goat format and Edison, all these retro formats are always there. I think that's why people like to like come back and just take a
Yeah.
look at these old formats. Like, hey, I used to play during that time, and because they're old formats, nothing's changed. I mean, aside from people trying out new
Yeah.
decks and new card theory.
Yeah, that's definitely the appeal for me is like it's something that like I can like not invest too much time into and still like, play here and there with my friends. I do really regret not going to the Orlando event that took place recently
Yeah.
because I live really close. I live really, really close
Okay.
to Orlando. I don't know. I guess like leading up to the event, I kind of like I was like really focused on work and like just playing poker and stuff. I had kind of made the decision like months in advance. I was like, I'm just not going to go to it because I just want to stay focused on what I'm doing. And then like when it got really close, I started getting like really intense FOMO. And
Yeah.
I was like, and I was just like, I was torturing myself. Like, I was like, oh, should I go? Should I go? I had already decided I wasn't going to go, but I really want to go. And then I ultimately didn't end up going, but the nostalgia and the FOMO,
Hmm.
like, was really intense.
But it's so cool. It really is like a time capsule of retro Yugi, especially when a lot of more like seasoned veterans go. All right, we got the last question in here. We're gonna kind of tone it down a little bit, so it's not gonna be too chaotic. But I think it's just the perfect last question. Does Ryan Spicer ever run Spice?
Was this question by JDZ?
It might as well have been.
Does Ryan Spencer ever run Spice? If I think it's gonna be a winning deck, then yes. I remember there was a few events where I innovated some like interesting things that were not like standard in the early stages of like DDT. If you remember that, like Diamond Dude Turbo.
Yeah, yeah, GX
Um,
era.
yeah, I remember I developed a strategy with it was like Card Trooper, Machine Duplication, and then I ran like Bazoo and Dimension Fusion. I remember like practicing a lot leading up to that event. I thought and still think that deck was like really good. It was basically just how it sounds like you Machine Duplication Card Trooper to like fill your grave, Bazoo, Dimension Fusion. It just so happens that I missed the boat on DDT for that event, and DDT was like a lot better. Had I known about DDT sooner, I would have went that direction. I always liked tech spice. I remember it was in the X Saber format, and I remember I topped that event, and it was prior to nationals. And I remember in that event, like Royal Oppression was just becoming popular. Like people were main decking Royal Oppression and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the next event was nationals, and I remember like figuring out that you can main deck Trap Stun, and it was really fucking good against Royal Oppression because what would happen, because everyone was main decking Royal Oppression, is like they would try to flip their Royal Oppression to like stop you from like going off, and then you would Trap Stun them, and then you would develop your board, and then you could use their Royal Oppression against them while you have a board. So that was like pretty sweet. I mean, so I would say that's really the extent of the spice. Like, you know, if I could figure out like some type of like cool counter like that, you know, I would go all in on that. But yeah, as far as like running like something like crazy, I mean, I think the craziest thing I ever did was like I think I ran Exodia in a regional one time but I thought the deck was good.
Sure.
Like, you know, maybe I was wrong, but I thought it was good.
Hey, Exodia shows up once in a blue moon. It's not the craziest thing. I think someone brought it to Worlds one year. I think. Yeah, I mean, Trap sounds like a great tech card. Like you said, it's like your own personal on-off switch for Royal Oppression, especially during that time, like you said, when people start playing more, because there was that ruling change that let you kind of use it more proactively.
I was really motivated just by like winning, like I yeah.
I mean that's a great motivation. I mean, if you find ways, you know, like as you described through this, you know, find ways to win, but also enjoy what you're doing. You know, be comfortable. I think is a great way to look about like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, and really even any form of playing Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, as long as like you're enjoying yourself, but not to perhaps not to the extent where you're just losing all the time because, you know.
I don't want to be too harsh, but maybe I don't know. Maybe people, maybe they like almost like self-sabotage is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe they generally just like losing, and they're like, you know, it's more about the lulls.
An important part is just having that like mindset of like, hey, I'm gonna like try to understand what exactly I'm doing. You know, just be smart about what you're doing, even if it's not necessarily like, hey, I'm playing the most optimal stuff. I think that's like an important aspect to look in regards to like win rate. Yeah,
like why you're playing. Yeah, that was just something that was never in me. And like, I mean, when I do look back, like you would see people like, you know, they were just fans of the game. Like they're like fans of the anime, and they wanted to play like they wanted to play their like the deck that was featured in the show, and you know that was their why. You know, it's just a different why. So.
And hey, eventually Blue Eyes won World Championships, and I think was it 2016, I think. So for all those Blue Eyes players, there you go.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you for coming on to the In the Zone podcast. Is there any last comments or shout outs you'd like to give?
Thank you to the Yu-Gi-Oh community for like, you know, those early memories, and you know the people I grew up with, traveling with. Such awesome experiences and memories made during my time playing the game between the ages of 15 and like 20ish, I guess. You know, just like traveling almost every weekend to like another city or a different state just to like, you know, compete in these events, and you know, form these like relationships with people that I still talk to today, almost like 17 years later. So yeah, it definitely had a huge impact. And like one of my best friends, Kyle Bowling, you know, we talk about all the time how, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh was like probably like it might have been the kind of the highlight of life. Like it was just so fun, you know, like it's been hard to even have experiences that even compare to like those experiences, you know. It's really, really special. So I would just say, yeah, shout out to all the Yu-Gi-Oh nerds out there. I'm one of them, and I think it's a great thing. So, and thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anytime I can get like a well-respected guest on here, I am very pleased to get. You have any shout-outs you'd like to give?
Shout out. I mean, not really, not really. Yeah. Not really.
Right.
JDZ. Know what? I'll give a shout out to JDZ because JDZ he's been great. He's like he's responsible for getting me into some of these events. He's always been like encouraging me to play, and he like I resist a lot, and he's an advocate for me to play, and he's definitely he's gotten me into some events for sure. It's inspiring his like passion he has for the game and stuff, and all the people at Go Format, the work they're doing to recreate this community. So I guess those people definitely deserve shout outs.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for coming on the podcast. Again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for everyone who has been watching and keeping their eyes on this. And until I see you all next time, have a wonderful day.